Fact or fiction? NIL is hurting Florida State recruiting.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for the everydayers that make this a great show. You can find us wherever you get your podcast for free and on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe this podcast and comment whenever possible. We're going to be talking all things NIL today, and right off the bat, most fans, and myself included, were wrong. If you take nothing else away from this podcast, note that being wrong about this is also good. NIL is not, I repeat, is not as impactful as you might think, and I'm going to define why. There are a couple really key points throughout this show that I'm going to go through, and you're probably going to have to hear it all to understand, and I'm guessing most people do not believe what I'm saying because there has been so much negativity about Florida State's NIL. It's they're bankrupt, blah, blah, blah. It's not as important as you think, with caveats. So with that, today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Here's the deal, folks. NIL is here to stay. Every kid is different. What I'm giving is a big barometer of the overall landscape with personal opinions from myself, for one, but more importantly, from the recruits themselves. And then one of my buddies in the recruiting industry who I was just texting with a little bit ago, or DMing, but it's not what you think it is. And you can make your own opinions based on this intel. But again, these are face-to-face conversations. And then you go get some extra quotes, talk to a few other people on the record, et cetera, off the record. And you put it all together and you come up with this podcast. I've been following this for quite a while, and I'm sure many of you have as well. I'm a recruiting nut, so this is my bag. First off, and I got 3 areas to go through. Florida State's recruiting. I'm sure many of you have heard Florida State's collectives or whatever. They're bankrupt. They don't have enough money to compete with Georgia or LSU or Ohio State, whatever it is. Pick the school. That may be true on an individual recruit because some kids just want the bag. Let me tell you, most of the coaches that are getting rings right now avoid those kids like the plague anyway. So be careful for what one asks. That's the first part of this. Second, if you look at the kids that I spoke with, like at the Under Armour event back in late December, early January, when they had the Under Armour All-American game, I spoke to kids going to Oregon. Everybody knows Oregon uses NIL a lot. I spoke to kids going to Ohio State, kids going to Auburn, kids going to Miami, kids going to Florida State, etc., all across the country. I did not have one kid, even off the record, not one, tell me that NIL was their number one factor. Now you're going to say, well, Brian, why would they tell you that? These are off the record, like put the recorder away, just shooting the bull in the hallway or out on the practice field. Not one. And these kids are already signed anyway. The practices happened after December 20th. The media before that, like our first day there, when the recruits are coming in, the first thing they do is put their bags down and they go get interviewed, and then they go to their rooms. There was media from California, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, East Coast, you name it. We were all there. This is one of the things that we asked. In particular, my friend Manny Navarro of The Athletic, he covers recruiting nationally for them. He decided he was going to dive into it. I remember him talking to me about it before, and I thought, that's an interesting topic. He's just going to ask each kid, hey, how much did it impact? And I just sent Manny a message on Twitter or X, and I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what you gathered in the article you put out, NIL wasn't as important, just like big box barometer here. And this is what Manny gave me. This is direct quote just a few minutes ago from him directly. The majority of responses were playing time, NFL development, and winning as the most important factors, end quote. Now, Manning interviewed about 50 kids, and these are the elite of the elite. They're Under Armour All-American game. They got Power 5 offers across the country. Now, that's not to say it's not a factor, but is it a primary? That's what this is about. And again, I was wrong, and I'm going to guess most of you as well were wrong. Does it help in certain situations? I'm going to talk about an elite player here in just a few minutes that you could make an occasion, and this is extremely rare. Exception for, yes. We will get on to that point in about 10 minutes. But overall, the key isn't what you do to get the kid in with money, because if he goes in, let's say he has a good year as a freshman or sophomore, somebody else is going to offer him more and he's not loyal to your program, and he gone. He gone. You can't have that. That's not how you build a roster. Some say that Norvell has not done a good job of building the roster because of the transfer portal. I've been leery of it, and for whatever reason, I still don't know how he does this. He's better at it than anybody else because he's finding the right fits. And this is for the whole staff. I shouldn't just say one person, but Norvell is the head coach. They do a tremendous job of finding guys that fit. Are you still going to have some issues? Possibly. But I think some of the kids, and I'm probably guilty of this as well, think that, well, you brought in transfers. What do you expect? Just because you're a transfer doesn't mean it's bad. A lot of the guys that are starting quarterbacks in the NFL now or on the backup were transfer quarterbacks, and a bunch more are going to be. Look at some of like LSU in 2019. I think it's pretty safe to say they took a pretty good transfer from Ohio State. Won the Heisman, 360 touchdowns. These things happen. Florida State's quarterback the last few years, Jordan Travis, transfer. So there's certain things you got to do. You got to find the right fits. It's still just like recruiting. You got to go through and do your due diligence. Fair enough. NIL inducements, though, look at A&M. We're not kidding anybody here by saying A&M was just trying to buy kids. How well did that work out? F minus. F minus on A&M. And anybody out there, if you're going to comment on anything else, I want your take on what A&M did, because it was obvious what Jimbo was doing. They got more money at A&M you can shake a stick at. I was told their endowment is $18 billion. Oil, oil, oil. It's in East Texas. It's easy. How well did that work out, though, even with an elite roster? Be careful for what one wishes. Here's the other thing. I spoke with some of those kids, too, and I got two stories here real quick. Number one, a couple Oregon commits. They both told me in different conversations, not related, off the record, they had NIL brought up to them, but they said it came last. Like, that's the mistake. Like, they were both like, this is weird because we built relationships. One kid told me he picked Oregon, even though he got more money offered to him by Ohio State. I'm like, okay, I respect that. He just said he felt more comfortable with Oregon staff. Cool. I get it. The other thing, there's a kid that's a class of 20. I'll leave his name out of it. It's somebody Florida State is recruiting as well. I talked to recently, and I asked him about it. I said, this NIL stuff is getting pretty crazy. I said, how much does that impact you? He like this face-to-face conversation, and he's like, it's out there. And he was like shocked by some of the things that were thrown out. Like, he's just a normal kid from Florida growing up, and he's not like poorest kid in the world, but he's not rich either. He, like his eyes just was like, he was blown away. It almost, I think, turned him off a little bit. Like, do you want me as a player? Like, what do you expect out of me? Like, I didn't dig too deep. I didn't get too touchy with him, but I could just tell by his body language, you can go too far with NIL. Like, you're not going to put in the effort to get to know this guy. I didn't ask him which schools because I know it's multiple, but I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Coming up on the other side, we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of NIL in specific situations and how it changes a locker room. If you don't do it right, again, look at A&M, and there's some other programs I'm going to talk about right after this. Let's talk a little bit about Fire TV. This is something that I use and have since 2016. If you do not understand what it is, it's the cheaper way to get around a ridiculous cable bill. Fire TV is destination for sports, games and highlights. Like, I watch ESPN, I watch NBC, ABC, whatever it is. If you want to watch NBA playoffs, something else, it's easy to get through. You're going to be able to manipulate your cable lineup, but on an app. It's really simple to use. You just plug it in, and you set it up in a couple of minutes on your smart TV. And if you want, you can organize, like you're a 7-8 channel guy or gal, you can line it up however you want. You can organize it alphabetically. You can organize it how you want. It's up to you. Whether it's opening weekend baseball or anything else, you can have it however you want. They also, this is something else they just come out with, and I haven't personally experimented a whole lot with it, but they've also got Fire TV channels. Alexa, play Fire TV channels. You'll get it. It's not that hard. So if you want to have a $200 cable bill, go ahead. My dad does, and I turned him off. He's looking into this now because he's like, I'm tired of this. You can get it for under $100, save yourself a lot of money. So make sure you check out Fire TV. All right, now it's time to talk about something that is probably the most concerning for fans, coaches, other players, etc. How does the locker room get impacted by NIL? If you don't do it right, it can cause negativity. There was some angst, obviously, with Florida State. Some guys wanting to leave or potentially to leave, and I think I know Bud Elliott did a tremendous job with this, Nolecast and some other pods that he's involved with, like Cover 3, and just talking to people. He helped educate some guys. The market is nowhere near what players think it is. This is not, I repeat, this is not the NFL. If you get $50K, you did pretty good. This $400,000 and all this other crap, that's garbage. Schools will say goodbye. You know, like backups asking for that. Starter is one thing, but there are backups asking for hundreds of thousands. Get the hell out of here, man. That's ridiculous. That stuff, I think, will be squashed because it didn't have like this at Knowles. This is across college football. So I just want to throw that out there as an extra. BS. It ain't going to happen. Second part here. This is the important thing. If you're going to have returning players that get more NIL money, did you earn it? That was the original intent of NIL anyway. Florida State gave guys money, from what I understand. I didn't ask numbers or anything, that deserved it. And they're doing their best through the different collectives to do it the right way, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. However, and this is the elephant in the room, when does Norvell, and you can pick whatever school you want, or any head coach, use NIL as the carrot to secure a transfer or recruit or whatever? This is really hard because there is no mathematical answer. And I'm not talking about the total. It's a big number. But when do you do it? Here's my personal take, because again, this is subjective, and this is going on just conversations with recruits, players at schools, etc. This is just information that I've gathered. And I'm going to use somebody that I know well. And if you're a Florida State fan, you probably know the name Jeremiah Smith. He ended up signing with Ohio State. He was offered oodles of money to go to school X, Y, and Z. And he decided on Ohio State. He told me face to face, no hesitation whatsoever, before his junior year of high school was over. He'd just committed to Ohio State. He picked them based on their consistent track record with that staff, specifically of producing receivers. Pretty smart. And that goes right back to what Manny Navarro said in the comment. I'll read it again just for those of you that may have forgot. This is really important. The majority of responses were playing time, NFL development, which that's Jeremiah, and winning as the most important factors. That's his research, and that's pretty much exactly what I've heard as well. NIL can help when a kid's confused, when it's like, man, I don't know. Well, then you just take the money. Let that decide. It's a rare exception. That's part A. And then part B, is it still a good idea? Because how's your locker room going to react? Because of Jeremiah's situation, everybody had him top 5 in the nation, I think. I had him number 1 forever as the best player, and several other people did as well. This is different. I don't think Florida State or any like Ohio State, et cetera, is going to be surprised when he comes out and competes well. He's already doing well at Ohio State, by the way. I think he'll end up being their number 1 before the end of his freshman year. No BS. He's that kind of player. If you go out and give a kid a bag that's elite, top 3 recruit in the country or something, I think your locker room's cool. But if you give, like, let's say you've got a depth chart that's pretty good at whatever position, linebacker, offensive line, doesn't matter, and you go get a kid that's willing to wait, but he's getting more money than the guy starting, who's earned it, who's went through off-season conditioning at Florida State or Oregon, whatever, especially if that kid's just like the number 180 player in the country, consensus by like 247, On3, ESPN, and Rivals. That's a problem. You have to pick and choose. And if the kid says no, goodbye. Sometimes you got to take less to get more. This is an old saying, and more is less, or less is more. That really applies to recruiting and NIL, man. You have to be careful. And it can go to the transfer portal too. A guy that didn't work where you're at comes in, especially some like a lower level kid that nobody knows anything about, in the locker room. The only opinion that matters is in that locker room. If you screw around with that and give one of these kids money up front and it's known in the locker room, or even worse, if the wrong information is in the locker room about it, coach has got to make sure that everybody knows. That's part of their job too. If that is the case, you're in trouble. Things can go sideways in a hurry. The other part to that, if you set a standard early with this, and we're still in the early stages of NIL, hey, it's only an exception. Otherwise, you got to earn it. You will have more guys stay on your roster, compete for your school, and help you win football games and get to the college football playoff. From there, I think everybody's on the same page. Everybody wants to compete in the playoff. I mean, if you don't, then get the hell out of Dodge. If you're thinking about skipping out on that, you don't need to be a part of college football, period. But that's just my take. So, again, timing with it is important. How does it impact your roster? Florida State, look at the kids they just had come in the transfer portal. It's an elite group. And, we got another window on the 16th and the 30th next month in April. Florida State's hitting the right guys. You got to give Norvell credit. They're not wasting time. Do you think those guys would come if they weren't going to be treated fairly, NIL, and the locker room going to be right? Really? Guys like Marvin Jones, I get it. He's got history with his family here, but he can go wherever the hell he wants. NIL is not hurting Florida State. Again, this is the big overall theme. I was wrong originally because I'd heard a lot of stuff and didn't do my own research. I have done that now. So is Manny, and so have other people, in face-to-face conversation with recruits. And you can just look at the guys that are getting into portal. Do you really think it's hurting? I'll let you think about that and make your own judgment on it. But for me, it's pretty simple. Florida State has been selective with how they do it. You still need to continue to build it. And there are different people that are trying to help the Florida State collectives and figure out the best way for funding for not only the players, but coaches, facilities, etc. It's a big part of it. But the arms race is not as much as you think. Development, winning, playing time, those are the keys. Most kids I talk to, it's, for me personally, I don't know about Manny, I don't know what the rank is, but the NFL development was the number one thing. Do I think I'm going to get a coach at that school that's going to help me get to the ultimate level? That's a yes or no. I'd like a nickel for every freaking time I've had somebody ask me that. Like, what do you think about this, etc.? And I say, go where you're going to be coached. And then when I asked kids whether it's the same person or somebody else, it's almost like I'm talking to myself because I hear the same thing from recruits. Not NIL first. That's the additional. So with that, I'm going to talk about, to wrap up, how NIL is actually helping Florida State and build their culture, coming up next. LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality care professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team, and faster and for free. Personally, I've used LinkedIn Jobs for I don't even know how many years, whether you're trying to get an internship, whether you're trying to connect with somebody that you used to know, an old boss, to get a recommendation, get some information for somebody. You can message them via LinkedIn just like you would on X or something else, on Instagram, etc. It's a great tool in numerous ways for any small business owner, or anybody else for that matter, trying to get into a job situation. So LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a network of, ready for this, 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. How should NIL work for Florida State, and why is it already, actually? You see how we kind of turn this around? And again, I had to do my own research, and I advise you to do it as well to the best of your ability. I know not everybody's going to go to Under Armour camp and interview kids, but it's different than you think. Here's the platform, folks. Number one, you just got to be smart about the people getting the money. If you look around at the world in general, forget football. When a certain young person has a pocket full of cash, how well does that end? You got to make sure not only the money's being sent out, but you got to have the right people around them to make sure they're not just going out and buying a race car and ending up like an idiot wrapped around a telephone pole. That stuff's happened recently, and it's sad. 2, did the player at Florida State, let's just use the Noles specifically, did they deserve it? This goes back to points in the last segment and the one before. Did they deserve it? If it did not, did it help your team because you're ticking off guys in the locker room like, hey, man, he's a good player, but I've been here for 3 years, and I'm a 2-year starter going into my senior year, and I could have turned pro. Why is he getting more? You got to be selective. Do you think, again, that Florida State would have got these transfers they just had and this recruiting class if they didn't spread the wealth accordingly? If they didn't set up opportunities for these young men to see that there's a chance to get developed? Of course not. But that's too easy. The low-hanging fruit and stupidity on the social media, whether it's Facebook or whatever else, people throwing shots at Florida State or pick a school, they just want to have fun. Don't take the bait. Florida State would not be in the position they're in from a long-term perspective if they didn't use NIL properly. There's exceptions, like I just discussed a few minutes ago. Somebody like a Jeremiah Smith, if they threw money at him, hell, I get it. And I'm sure they threw plenty. He just chose Ohio State, whatever. There are exceptions. By and large, the players have to get to campus, do the right things on and off the field to earn the money. Money ain't free, folks. I don't care if somebody gave it to you or not. You still did something, or else they wouldn't give that money to you. Family member, business, friend, foe, whatever it may be, money is earned. When it's not earned, bad things happen. That's the way it is in normal society as well as college football, which is one of the most unique niches in all of the world. Florida State has done a good job so far, and here's the parting shot that I have for you today. If you're consistent with not giving money to the wrong people, and I am wholeheartedly believing that Florida State has done the right thing, or especially this transfer class wouldn't have worked because you'd had a bunch of transfers already, you'll be good long term. We're going to see some more of that through recruiting and, again, in the second transfer portal window. But the players that come in, they might get something. And I don't know what everybody – they probably have some kind of fund. They get X for every player or whatever. They're going to make it known that players have to earn it. If they didn't, you would see a bunch of guys in the portal. I know this from talking to people at other schools, other recruits, coaches, etc. When you offer too much to Johnny and the other guys on the roster don't get it right, you know, they were, in their mind at least, done wrong because they'd done well for the Noles, they'll leave. How many guys have left after these transfers were announced? It's worked out pretty well. So I think Florida State football is in a much better spot with NIL than many think. You can think however you want. I've done my research. Now you should go do yours as well. With that, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Please make sure you share it whenever you can and comment. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Texas A&M is the one that's fascinating to me because I think they just totally shot their wad on stupidity with the money they threw out, screwed up their locker room, etc., and it hurt recruiting moving forward. Excuse me. But Florida State hasn't. So please like and subscribe. Everybody have a great day. Thank you very much.